Greetings. I am Pastor Harris, and welcome to this edition of Understanding with Pastor Harris. In this series, we've been talking about our relationship with God and how to make it better because He loves us so much and He wants us to be close to Him. We've been recently talking about prayer and all the many wonderful things about prayer. And if you've missed it, you do good to go back and to review some of the last 5 episodes of this broadcast. Separation from God? Well, you see, the Bible tells us that God made this world, and when He made this world, He made man, and He loved man so much, the Bible says, He made man out of His own image. He gave him everything in the world he wanted and put him on a perfect world with everything he could ask for, and then gave him dominion. That's power over all that was here. God has always had laws, and God told man that he could enjoy everything but one tree do not eat from, and God said, if you do, you shall die. And man violated that principle and that law, and he ate of the tree, and he was condemned by sin to death. Well, we learned that God loved man so much that He didn't just end it right there. In fact, God had prepared an alternative plan so that if man did disappoint Him, the Bible tells us that Jesus had already said He would pay the price of this particular death for mankind. So man continued to live on until Jesus came. But sin brought a separation between God and man. For you see, in the beginning of the world, the Bible tells us that God came down every day and met with Adam and Eve in the garden, and He talked with them, and he just had a wonderful time. But because of sin, God is perfect, and God cannot be involved in the presence of sin. So God removed Himself from the presence of man. Sin brought separation. Separation wasn't the only thing that came to earth because of sin. The Bible tells us in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, verses 14 through 19, that there were some serious effects that came upon the earth that were never seen before because of sin. When you get the opportunity, please review them for yourself. The effects of sin upon the world. But God loved man. And Romans 5th chapter, verse 12 tells us, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, Adam and Eve, and death through sin, that was the promise that God gave man, it says also death was passed on to all men. That means that sentence is passed on to you and me in every generation since then, because all the Bible says are born into sin. But this love of God that I've been telling you about, this great love of God, He made man in His own image, and He's never stopped loving us. That's why the Bible tells us about this relationship of ours and sin and God. John 3:16 is the most powerful one in the Bible. It says that God so loved the world, not just one of us, not just those who sin and don't sin, but God so loved the world that He gave His Son to die for our sins. 1 John, the 4th chapter, verse 10, explains this a little bit better. It says, and love, this love of God, consists in this, the Bible says, not that we love God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. That means He makes things right for us. Isaiah, the 53rd chapter, verse 6, and I like the way the NLT version puts it. It says, all of us, like sheep, have strayed away from God. I tell you, but God still loves us. I have to put a footnote in there, because all of us, at some point in time, and some right now, have strayed of what God has asked from us. We have left God's path, the Bible say, to follow our own. Yet, the Lord laid on Him, Jesus, from John 3:16, the sins of us all. That's this love. So you see, God has already prepared a way back to him from the separation that we have. Let me explain to you about that way back. John the 14th chapter verse 6 says, Jesus said and answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Nobody can get you back to God except through Jesus. John the 10th chapter verse 7 says, so he said to them again, truly, truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. John the 10th chapter verse 27, it says, my sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. Sheep, he's talking about us. That's why Psalms, the 100th chapter verse 3, know that the Lord is God. It is he who has made us and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. All of us are his sheep. The light ones, the dark ones, the little ones, the bad ones, the male ones, the female ones, the afflicted ones. All of us, we are sheep in the pasture, the world of God. Acts the 17th chapter verse 27 says, so God intended that we would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is never far from each one of us. God is never far from us. What do I mean by that? He is never too far away to hear your voice, your prayers, your conversations. He's never too far from any of us. It didn't make any qualifications about who the us are. I keep telling you, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter where you came from, what you've been doing, what you're doing now, God loves you. He may not love what you're doing, but he loves you. And he's never too far away from any of us. We need to come back to God, and we have that opportunity, every one of us, to do so. We have to build a relationship with him. That's where it starts. We have to learn to talk to him. And when doing so, as we talked about in our last 2 episodes, you will learn that he talks back to you, and you will learn how to understand his voice and exactly what he intends for you. God loves you. God wants you to love him. And that's why he is always there for us. We can talk to him. We call it prayer. Short, long, intermediate. It makes no difference. He hears and answers every one of them. And when you build a relationship with God, you'll learn how to love to talk to him. You'll learn to be patient, to hear from him, and you'll learn to appreciate every answer that he gives you back in return. God loves you. He loves you. He loves you. And he wants to bring you back together with him. God bless you. And I'll see you the next time on Understanding with Pastor Harris.